Gospel according to John. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming, leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I'm the good shepherd. I know my own. My own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep who are not of this fold. I must bring them also. And they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life, that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down. I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. The word of the Lord. You may be seated. I've ever preached on a psalm. And the reason why is because I get so many, every time Psalm 23 comes up, someone wants to read Psalm 23, what is the thing they always ask me? They always ask me to read from the King James Version. And they don't want to actually read from the King James Version, they want to read from the Revised Standard Version to be exact. But the problem with Psalm 23 is the psalm problem we have with a lot of things that are familiar to us in Christian theology, in the Bible. And it's the fact that we recite them, and it's good that we've committed these things to memory, but sometimes when you commit things to memory, you just sort of go through them. They become a mantra. It becomes a rhythm. There's nothing wrong with rhythms, but sometimes you have to actually know what it is that you're saying. And sometimes it's good just to slow things down, to look at things. The most important thing, I think, for us to think about when we read Psalm 23 is this first primary question. Is the Lord your shepherd? Is the Lord really your shepherd? Now, this isn't one of those altar call moments. This isn't one of those things where you have to make a decision for the Lord, per se. But this is a point where you need to ask, what exactly is my relationship to the one that I confess as my shepherd? Listen to this translation. My shepherd is Yahweh. I don't lack anything. He makes me lie down in grassy pastures. He guides me by completely restful waters. He restores my life. He leads me in faithful paths for his name's sake. Even when I walk in the darkest canyon, I don't fear. fear disaster, because you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they're comfortable to me. You lay a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You bathe my head with oil. My cup amply satisfies. Good and commitment will certainly chase me all the days of my life. And I will return to dwell in Yahweh's house for the long, long days. Is the Lord your shepherd? Much like the Lord's Prayer or John 3:16, we seem to nod along with the cadence of a familiar text, yes, almost certainly in the King James Version. We seldom take a moment, though, to ask ourselves, is this how we really see God, especially in this day and age? I suppose if we did, if we were truly honest with ourselves, and we probably should be before God and before ourselves, we wouldn't like the answer. Because if you are anything like me, and I assume you are, because that's why you come to church on Sundays, many times the Lord is not your shepherd. Oh, He may be. He may be when things are going well, and you wish to share that joy, or you feel a sense of obligation to be joyful in His presence. You may think of Him as a shepherd when the chips are really down, when things are going poorly, and you desperately need somebody, as all the other options that you've tried in your life have run out. So often in our lives, those moments don't come. The mountains or the valleys, a lot of times we're just going through the plains. And so often in those moments, the Lord feels far away from us. Possibly because we are far away from Him. So often the Lord is a shepherd whom we select when it's convenient, when we feel it is necessary at a particular moment. That's when the Lord is our shepherd. But a shepherd who is ours when it's convenient for Him to be our shepherd is no shepherd at all. And yet this is the kind of shepherd that our world wishes to proclaim to us. Our convenient age so desperately pretends that this is the case, and that it's not important for us to go into the text, but merely to follow along with the cadence and repeat it without thinking about what the promises are inside the text. I find there to be three primary qualities of the shepherd that the psalmist, that David lays out here. The shepherd's power is a wild otherness. The shepherd's headship is an absolute headship. And the shepherd's bounty that He lays before us is a gift to those in relationship to Him. The wild otherness, the absolute headship, and the mind-bending gift that He gives to us is what defines this shepherd for our lives, and it doesn't seem to make sense that I don't seem to follow Him when all of this is on offer. What is so interesting is that our lesson from the 23rd Psalm sees everything from the perspective of the sheep. Our gospel lesson sees things from the perspective of the shepherd. That's a really interesting tandem. The sheep in Psalm 23 and throughout all the ages since have been waiting for their shepherd to appear. They know that God is there. They know that is the shepherd they should follow. But the shepherd does appear and lays out His mission in the 10th chapter of John. History and even the Bible are filled, though, with stories of how we go after different shepherds. How we wander off away from the shepherd's voice and the shepherd's call. These sheep people, you and me, yearn for a shepherd, that they can happen to mold and bend to their control whenever their feelings satisfy or whatever their mercurial desires dictate. That's no shepherd. Whoever heard of a shepherd being like that, of a shepherd being molded by the sheep in that particular way? What we must remember is that first quality of the shepherd. It is a wild otherness. By this I mean that the shepherd was thought to be outside of human contact. A shepherd is not a sheep. That's the first thing you should know. You don't put one sheep in charge and call it a shepherd. Shepherds need large and open spaces in order for their sheep to have ample room to graze. That's the second quality you need to know about their wild otherness. Not only are they other than the sheep, but they are set apart, or they set themselves apart from the rest of the world. The sheep need that open pasture, which is what they can give them. And so, on one level, this otherness led to shepherds, though, getting a bit of a reputation. Shepherds weren't considered part of polite society. Because of this, the otherness seemed to be complete. We tend to forget that. We tend to forget the otherness of Christ. The otherness, the fact that he is like us, made in the image of God, or made in the image, to be in the image of us, but was God. We seem to forget the fact that he calls us out of this life. And we seem to forget that he earned quite the reputation for having priorities sent upon his task to be the shepherd, rather than following along with what was in vogue in the larger world. But on the other hand, this imagery of the shepherd was associated with kingship in the ancient Near East. This was also a kind of otherness, as the king was not held to the same rules to whom he governed. The king also had a special mission that no one else had in the kingdom. Here, he exemplifies the perfect kingship, the perfect shepherdness, in the fact that he is given over entirely to looking after his flock. There is no desire for selfish ambition in Christ's mission. He is focused only on the will of the Father, and the will of the Father is to protect the flock. In these ways, Jesus exemplifies the wild otherness of the shepherd leader. This shepherd leader that is seen all throughout, not just the Bible, but the entire world at the time. Moving out of the metaphorical sphere, though, one of the greatest difficulties the shepherd faced was just how dumb those sheep can be. Some of you know what it's like to raise sheep, and all I have to say is God bless you. But sheep can recognize and therefore follow their master's voice, at least until they get distracted. We know that they recognize the voice, but that they don't always want to hear what it has to say, and so they begin to wander off in search of greener pastures. The shepherd, therefore, has to be willing to use the hook, to use the staff, to bring the sheep back into line, to keep the flock together. It's no use complaining that the shepherd has been a little too rough with you when you are trying to run off a cliff. His headship is absolute. In that flock, deep down inside, everyone knows just that. We all chafe a little bit when we hear this because we've been taught by endless commercials that we can have it our way, that we are the center of our own story. We don't like to think about the fact that Christ really could be the shepherd in our lives, which means that he has control over things. And maybe, just maybe, he knows what's better for us than we know ourselves. It's not big things, is it? It's the little distractions in life that get us. That little distraction you and I have with a little deal that might not be quite so moral. Or maybe it's that idea you and I have that compromises our ethics just a smidge. We find that we've strayed from the Master's call. It doesn't matter who you are in this culture, we are constantly going to be tempted. Tempted by the myth that we can be our own sheep, a flock of one. We follow the shepherd when it's convenient. Like a wayward sheep, we are always looking for those imaginary greener pastures. Why do we turn aside if we confess that our shepherd has our best intentions at heart? Firstly, we wish to be not so much the shepherd with its otherness and responsibility, but rather to be the head sheep, the one the other sheep follow, who may or may not have it all together. Secondly, Christian obedience breeds character. Following the shepherd can be difficult, but character requires sacrifice. The sacrifice of lesser goods and desires to turn aside from the greener pastures and follow Christ wherever he might go. When push comes to shove, that can be a pretty big ask for any one of us, even if it comes straight from God. Thirdly, the shepherd asks us to be part of a larger flock. That may be just the hardest one of all. Because that flock may have a few people, a few sheep, that happen to get under our wool. There's a certain rub to it. They rub us the wrong way when they question our flaws. And so we have a cognitive dissonance when it comes to Jesus as shepherd. We mouth the words, but maybe our heart is still saying, until greener pastures come along. We want him to protect us, while at the same time allowing us to wander off wherever our little sheep hearts desire. The truth is, though, we cannot have both. Leads us to the last and most difficult part. One that doesn't seem like it's difficult on the face of it, but is when we really think about it, and especially when we think about it in our lives. You and I have a hard time accepting God's love. That may sound preposterous to you, but just think about how hard it is to be loved. We may say to ourselves and others, what could possibly be the problem with this? Let me ask you a question. I assume many of you are like me. Have you ever been given a gift? Has it ever caught you off guard, this gift? Have you ever struggled to know the right words to say, and just for a moment you think, I really wish this person hadn't done this. I really wish this person hadn't given me this gift. I know that I have. It's odd that bitterness, resentment, all of these darker emotions pop in the moment when someone shows care and love to us. Saying thank you is hard for us because it demonstrates the fact that we know deep down inside that we still need things. Gifts become difficult to receive because they require an acknowledgement that there will always be something just beyond our work will have to rely on other people. This is definitely true when we consider the mercy of Christ. We're intimidated to rely upon God to handle something that we can't. We believe that it's selfish for us to take such a great gift as Christ's atonement in the first place. We're afraid to have such a close and, dare I say, intimate relationship, especially with the one who is the creator and sustainer of the universe. Worldly religions do try and get around this by placing this discomfort back on our shoulders through our works, and by placating our sense of resentment with pride and a sense of self-worth. The Good Shepherd promises to lead us because he has placed his name upon us. He is the one who lays down his life for his sheep, after all. Hear what Martin Luther has to say about this shepherd. If the Lord is my shepherd, and I am his sheep, then I am very well supplied, both in body and in soul. He will feed me well, protect and preserve me from misfortune, care for me, help me out of all troubles, comfort me, and strengthen me. In short, he will do for me what a good shepherd can be expected to do. All of these blessings and more are comprehended in that single little word, shepherd. We may run from the shepherd because we fear his gifts. We may dash away because his care, we sense, will somehow diminish us instead of make us into something far greater than you and I can possibly imagine on our own. So I want to ask you this again. Is the Lord your shepherd? Or put another way, do you believe that Christ is the Good Shepherd? Can you deal with the unexpected holiness of Christ? Can you follow him through the shadowy places of life, even when you sense you could escape to greener pastures? Can you bear to be part of his flock? These are not simple and straightforward questions. Much like the song itself, we may nod in approval, but it takes a lifetime to fully come to grips with what is being asked of us. But if you and I follow the shepherd, we will find that in our life's journey, we're walking alongside him as he's picking up the strays out of this world and carrying them to his fold. As he takes sheep that are not familiar to our fold, he transforms them and us into sheep who are daily becoming more and more his sheep. The sheep that are part of this fold are not marked by an ideological litmus test, nor demonstrations of superhuman feats of righteousness. No, these sheep are marked by one thing. They simply heard the call of their master and trusted that he is ready to lay down his life for his flock. Amen.